Sanders on his death. That's the only time you're going to see it. But until then, the coverage is very, very complete for the Mark Zuckerbergs, who responded to Bernie's challenge against the billionaires with all kinds of coverage.
Yeah.
The Facebook founder, came back to defend billionaires. Now, why would he do such a crazy thing?
Because that's part of his group. That's his clique.
Pete Buttigieg. That's what I say, folks. I can't get over it. Have more billionaire donations than anybody in the field.
Yeah.
He's got his nose right up the corporate Yahoo.
Yeah. Of course they do. They all do.
Yeah.
Except for one. And by the way, for you Michigan listeners that are hearing this prior to Sunday, Bernie Sanders is going to be in Detroit Sunday. Down at, I believe, Cass Technical.
Yeah, high school.
Yep. So check him out there. We're going to try and get down there if we can. But it's funny that you happen to mention Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg got grilled by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recently in Congress.
And I have the clip. Grill like AOC.
I have the clip. It runs about 5.5 minutes. We're going to play it in its entirety. This is Zuckerberg getting tied up in knots, trying to figure out how to respond to probably the greatest congresswoman we have currently right now. Take a listen,
maybe
folks.
Maybe in a lifetime.
It's good to see you, Mr. Zuckerberg. I think you, of all people, can appreciate using a person's past behavior in order to determine, predict, or make decisions about future behavior. And in order for us to make decisions about Libra, I think we need to kind of dig into your past behavior and Facebook's past behavior with respect to our democracy. Mr. Zuckerberg, what year and month did you personally first become aware of Cambridge Analytica?
I'm not sure of the exact time, but it was probably around the time when it became public. I think it was around March of 2018. I could be wrong, though.
Mm-hmm. When did Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg become aware of Cambridge Analytica?
I don't know off the top of my head.
You don't know. Did anyone on your leadership team know about Cambridge Analytica prior to the initial report by The Guardian on December 11th, 2015?
Congresswoman, I believe so, and that some folks were tracking it internally.
And
I'm actually, as you're asking this, I do think I was aware of Cambridge Analytica as an entity earlier. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I was tracking how they were using Facebook specifically.
When was the issue discussed with your board member, Peter Thiel?
Congresswoman, I don't know that off the
You don't know. This was the largest data scandal with respect to your company that had catastrophic impacts on the 2016 election. You don't know?
Well, Congresswoman, I'm sure we discussed it after we were aware of what happened.
Okay. You announced recently that the official policy of Facebook now allows politicians to pay to spread disinformation in 2020 elections and in the future. So I just want to know how far I can push this in the next year. Under your policy, using census data as well, could I pay to target predominantly black zip codes and advertise them the incorrect election date?
No, Congresswoman, you couldn't. We have, even for these policies around the newsworthiness of mm-hmm. content that politicians say, and the general principle that I believe that...
But you said you're not going to fact check my ads.
We have, if anyone, including a politician, is saying things that that is calling for violence or could risk imminent physical harm or voter or census suppression mm-hmm. when we roll out the census suppression policy, we will take that content down.
So you will... There is some threshold where you will fact-check political advertisements. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, Congresswoman, yes, for specific things like that, where there's imminent risk of harm.
Could I run ads targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Would I be able to run advertisements on Facebook targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal? I mean, if you're not fact-checking political advertisements, I'm just trying to understand the bounds here. What's fair game?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I think
so. You don't know if I'll be able to do that.
I think probably.
Do you see a potential problem here with a complete lack of fact-checking on political advertisements?
Well, Congresswoman, I think lying is bad, and I think if you were to run an ad that had a lie, that would be bad. That's different from it being, for in our position, the right thing to do to prevent your constituents or people in an election from seeing that you had lied.
So you won't take down lies, or you will take down lies? I think it's just a pretty simple yes or no.
Congresswoman,
I'm not talking about spin. I'm talking about actual
yes, in most cases, in a democracy, okay. I believe that people should be able to see for themselves what politicians that they may or may not vote for
so
are
you
saying,
won't take them
judge their
down.
Character for themselves.
So you won't take. You may flag that it's wrong, but you won't take it down.
Congresswoman, it depends on the context that it shows up. Organic post. Ads, the treatment is a little
One more question. In your ongoing dinner parties with far-right figures, some of who advance the conspiracy theory that white supremacy is a hoax, did you discuss so-called social media bias against conservatives, and do you believe there is a bias?
Congresswoman, so I don't remember everything that was in the question.
That's all right. I'll move on. Can you explain why you've named the Daily Caller, a publication well-documented with ties to white supremacists, as an official fact-checker for Facebook?
Congresswoman, sure. We actually don't appoint the independent fact-checkers. They go through an independent organization called the Independent Fact-Checking Network that has a rigorous standard for who they allow to serve as a fact-checker.
So you would say that white supremacist-tied publications meet a rigorous standard for fact-checking? Thank you.
Congresswoman, I would say that we're not the one assessing that standard. The International Fact-Checking Network is the one who is setting that standard.
Oh, really? Can you believe that, Jack? I loved seeing him tied up in knots. It was great.
How many times did he say, Madam?
Congresswoman,
Easy.
He was looking for words. He couldn't find his words, Jack. This was beautiful. And any of you conservatives out there that criticize AOC, you need to take a listen to this, because this was masterful takedown of an oligarch right there.
Yeah.
And for those of you that can't see it or refuse to see it, F you. Seriously.
Well, a takedown of an oligarch and an exposition on just how influential Facebook is for the rotten corporate establishment to get its message out.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, it's more than that, folks. Nothing social about allowing political entities to go unfact-checked and just put out there. I mean, I don't know what you think about Zuckerberg, but I think there's a lot of liberals that think, oh, he's a great guy. He's opened the door. What would he have without Facebook? Social media. No, they do.
Yeah. Oh, I know they do. The only reason I'm on Facebook, one, is to publicize this show, and two, to argue with these idiot moron right-wingers and tell them what a piece of human crap they are.
Out there in Vermont, new listeners, we're not fans of Zuckerberg. Steve Jobs was not one of our heroes, folks.
Nope.
These corporate oligarchs, these guys that even the liberal branch, particularly in the media, put on a pedestal, we don't see it that way.
Nope.
And evidently AOC doesn't see it quite that way either.
No, of course not.
She just calmly just took his clothes off.
Oh, that was fantastic. Just blistered him. He didn't know what to do. He was tied up worse than a pretzel. It's funny that they mentioned in there, she had mentioned Peter Thiel. Let me just remind our listeners that haven't listened in a while, or this is your first time, that Peter Thiel was responsible for the death of Gawker.com because he was the guy that personally bankrolled the Hulk Hogan lawsuit against Gawker over the Hulk Hogan sex tape, or Hulk Hogan had sex with Bubba the Love Sponge Clem's wife, and it was videotaped. They're the same group that caught Hulk Hogan using racial slurs. We'll get to some slurs in our Hammer Time segment a little bit later here.
It's not a fair
Peter
fight.
Thiel went after Gawker and bankrolled the Hulk Hogan lawsuit because it was Gawker that outed him as gay several years prior to this whole Hulk Hogan sex tape.
But folks, before that recording fades from your memory and from your ears, okay, let's just look at what a real enlightened progressive can do with one of these multi-billionaire oligarch corporate aficionados. Mm-hmm. They're not equipped. If you can ever get them and put them in the match, into a ring, a fair fight with a progressive, mm-hmm. they will absolutely melt, just like he did. They hide behind and they get their conservatives like Mayor Pete to attack Medicare for all. They have the Bidens out there who will just slyly attack progressive issues. They'll feed them with money and support, and then they let what they call good politicians, as you said, as who calls them congressional critters.
Jim Hightower, Congress critters.
Yeah, the critters. Really, that's really what an expert politician is today. How do you tap dance around looking like you're serving the people and the populace, at the same time have your hand right in the pants of big business?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very difficult balance, and a good one can do it.
Oh yeah, they absolutely can. Oh boy, I want to get back to something that we touched on real briefly, and that was the impeachment testimony and the 24 morons with the R after their name that broke in illegally. I got this story. This is by David Knowles. He's the editor of Yahoo News. This is dated October 23rd. Donald Trump knew in advance and approved of the plan for a contingent of Republican House members to disrupt the House impeachment inquiry Wednesday. That according to Bloomberg News. Again, let me just reiterate, Bloomberg, not a left-wing publication. They're very right. About 24 lawmakers stormed the secure hearing room Wednesday morning, disrupting the closed-door testimony of a Pentagon official. Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, the ringleader of the protest, told reporters, quote, "If behind those doors they intend to overturn the result of an American presidential election, we want to know what's going on." End of quote. By the way, 13 of those idiots in that troop are members of that committee. Okay. They've already got access to the behind closed-door testimony.
Wow.
Chanting, let us in, the members of the Conservative Freedom Caucus then entered a restricted area in the sensitive compartmented information facilities where the interviews with witnesses have been conducted. Some appeared to carry cell phones into the room in violation of security protocols. The chaotic scene unfolded one day after William Taylor, the senior U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, delivered damning testimony detailing how Trump had linked the release of U.S. military aid to Ukraine to public assurances that President Volodymyr Zelensky would launch an investigation into one of Trump's political rivals, former Vice President Joe Biden. The disruption Wednesday halted testimony from Laura Cooper, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat, California, ordered Capitol Police to remove the intruders, after which a security sweep of the facility was required. In a statement released Wednesday afternoon, Gaetz denied that he had coordinated the protest with the White House. In a tweet, Gaetz said, quote, "I organized and led this press conference, including entering the committee room. I never discussed this with any White House official, including the president." End of quote. Well, then where's Bloomberg getting their news from? Where are they getting the report from? Oh, I never coordinated with the president. Yeah.
Folks led by thugs, not leaders.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they are. While a key administration talking point has been that the Democrats are conducting their impeachment inquiry in secret, Republicans sit on all three of the committees involved in the investigation and have attended each of the sessions. When Republicans controlled the House, they conducted closed-door interviews with witnesses in their 3-year investigation into the terror attack that